Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook, a place where I like to jot down ideas. Um, Sometime back in the 1980s, I was introduced to robots that would hide disguised as other things and whatnot. This is sort of like the more natural way to see Bumblebee, and of course, you could get this golden one, and there's also a Camaro version of that as well. Um, as far as the toys went, you could also get this. This is a Tonka GoBot. This is Leader 1. It's that cool sort of jet. And that's a pretty neat thing. You could also get Super GoBots like this, which is modeled after a NASA shuttle. And I don't know if this was ever anyway, I can't tell you if this was something that they just allowed them to do. I mean, it's what it is. They actually use the name NASA, although those stickers are on there upside down. Um, anyway, I have no idea what permissions they would have had to create such a thing. Uh, as some of you probably know, if you owned one of these are not really toys. And that sounds terrible that I'm saying that, but like, this isn't something you can really just like play with. Now let's see if I can kind of get this apart without breaking it, because it is ancient technology. Come on, you. Ooh, I probably will end up breaking it here. Okay, then that extends. This extends. That flips out and back in somehow. There we go. Ooh. That flips around. This reveals the head. And that folds up there. Feet come down. And there you have a robot made from the space shuttle. So kind of a neat thing, right? I think for a lot of us, when we discovered these robots that look like, well, everyday things in some cases, or fantasy things, or whatnot, we often like to talk about being introduced to these by Robotech. And it wasn't until later on you found out that Robotech was sort of an amalgamation of other Japanese animations, Macross, and whatnot. So today's drawing is going to be kind of attributed to that. And I don't own any of those toys or action figures anymore of the Robotech Macross line, but I kind of have a familiarity with them. So I'm going to use these two to see if I can come up with what the Valkyries looked like. And it's not going to be exact, of course. This is mostly going to be from memory. So I'm going to sort of scribble this out, and yeah, we'll see what we can come up with. Actually, instead of using this to start, let's use the bunny pen and a light colored ink to start. I'm going to go to blue just because I like the look of that. So I'm just going to scribble this out and get the rough shape of where I want certain things to be. And I encourage you to kind of follow along as you wish. So I'm starting off, believe it or not, that's a robot head, the neck, and it's just the rough idea, right? So the canopy, which in this thing folds away in behind, but with the Valkyries, this actually folds into the front. And that's the style that I'm going to go with. So with Robotech, or the Macross, most of these things, the robots, the giant robots, were still piloted by humans, or at least by humanoids. They weren't all like AI or alien intelligence. So at least that's the way I sort of picture it in my head. Now, the concept of sketching this way, I know, is a little wacky, because by tradition, for myself, I like to try to use as few lines as possible, but I think this is just kind of a fun way of finding the shapes of certain things. And in most cases, it's better to use pencil. Let's back this out just a little bit. Okay. So with these robots, they often tried to find ways of using different parts of the ship or the craft or the tank to be part of the robot anyway. It looks a little more kind of Optimus Prime thing going on there, doesn't it? So there would have been like an undercraft laser cannon that the pilot in robot mode or whatever could use, kind of like a rifle. Now the feet and legs had a different kind of design, and I'm just going to move that along a little bit. The lower half of the legs, in a lot of ways, to me, seem a little bit like bell bottoms, if that makes sense. Now, Hugh Rookwood is I would say, kind of an expert in a lot of this kind of stuff. He's a fantastic illustrator. Does really cool stuff. And he would know these beings, these ships, quite well. Yeah, my memory of them isn't as good. The wings made these things look sometimes like fireflies, sprites. Anyway, that's a rough idea of what I was going for. I probably could have done the shoulders a little bit wider. Probably should. Anyway, as you probably know if you've watched this channel more than a couple of times, I don't like to do a lot of research. I like to try to do things from memory if at all possible. Let's see here. I do believe that a lot of them did this. As well, with a skull and crossbone. That is the rough idea that I have that just fell out of my head, so that's kind of interesting. You know, some part of this seems a little bit off. Something like that, I don't know. All right, so now I'm going to get out this thing and I'm going to basically find the lines that I want to keep. Let's zoom back in on that and we'll work our way through this. See if I can get that to stop shaking. After I'll get a look to see how close or see how my memory might have failed me. And I'm okay with that. I mean, as far as how memory works, I don't want to keep all the information in my head at all times. But I kind of believe this. I think it's possible that everything that you've ever seen or heard or sensed, I suppose, is possibly in your head, and that for whatever reason we like to eliminate the pathways to some of those memories because, you know, sometimes it's repeat information or what have you, and those memories can be triggered by the use of your other senses. So an example of that would be if you smelled, let's say, bacon cooking at the same time as dark roast coffee while you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it might remind you of a meal that you had or a conversation that you would have had with somebody when you had that meal. It's an interesting thing. So that memory can just kind of pop out of your head if you smell that. Anyway, just rambling, I suppose. That happens every so often, though. With me, anyway. Inside here is where the pilot would naturally be in a jet. sitting under the canopy. Yeah, I don't know about this. Another show that was fascinating was the Go Lion stuff, which would be Voltron. And, you know, there were actually a couple of different versions of Voltron, from what I remember too. There was one that had cars or vehicle Voltron, and then of course the famous lion version, Defender of the Universe. And I just remember those toys being pretty cool. I actually have like the DreamWorks Netflix version of that has a bunch of phrases, and anyway, it's kind of neat. I'm just sort of doing like a quick and ugly inking. Now, but the interesting thing about Japanese animation is how much effort went into specific detailing of machine, or in moments in your everyday life, somebody actually went through a great deal of effort to animate somebody getting a cup of coffee, for example. And you didn't really get to see that. Like, you'd watch people eat, but you could watch a character, you know, get up and crack an egg, or what else would be something that would be in some ways mundane, but not, you know, something that you'd need to do for your everyday life. You know, yeah, just making a meal, just the everyday kind of stuff. And I always found that interesting, that you'd see that in anime. Yeah, something seems strange the way that I did this here. But I do enjoy the detail often found in that animation style. I don't think I've drawn a Valkyrie in quite some time. Something else that you should also make note of, I guess, would be there would be obvious looks to certain mech or mechanical equipment as well. So if you wanted something to be fast, like very agile, you would make sure that the machine that was being piloted would look light. It would have very little armament, which would be the trade-off. And yeah, like a ship like this, in order to fly through the sky, would have to be light. Whereas like tanks or something that stays on the ground but would, have a lot of firepower, those things would be heavier. And so you'd notice, when you had like a walking battle robot, they had wider legs. They one moment. They had wider legs. They would have a lower sort of stance. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind when you're figuring out how to draw them or build them, I suppose. I don't know how far off I am with this, but I feel that's kind of in the right vein. Sorry about the extra special effects there, the sound effects. See what I did there. Okay, take another dip into the inkwell. Darken that in there just a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Let me go back to the end of that foot there for a moment. I think what I'll do is I'll try to watch a few clips, because I haven't seen Robotech in a while, a long while actually. And maybe I'll revisit this at some point just for fun. Now let's get a look at these wings here. And we won't go super long with the video. Finish off the handle of that rifle. the laser cannon. Some low-key shading underneath here. Do more over on this side. Finish off a bit of this hip now that I have that other arm inked out. I can come in here and put those kind of like louvers or whatnot of the venting in the Valkyrie's shorts. So I think when they were coming up with these designs, I don't know if they often thought about the toy or toy lines, if that was ever really a thing for them. I think they were looking for realistic ways to hide a robot skeleton inside the structure, more so like a practical thing, more so than, you know, how they could make toys. I think, you know, George Lucas did amazing things, considering that I don't know if people really wanted his movie to be successful. Star Wars, I'm talking about. And the idea that you would sell toys to go with a movie, I think it was pretty foreign to a lot of movie companies anyway. So, yeah, no, I don't really want to go that much further than this in its concept. Mainly because, again, I'm doing this from memory, so I don't really remember exactly how this might look. Now, I forget if the wings, they hinged on the back a little bit differently, and then, you know, what sections might have existed differently. Like this thing, for example, that splits apart from the tail of the device, but let's go back out and just kind of look at it that way for a moment. I think that's the rough idea of what I'm going for. I don't think it's exact, but you know, when you're dealing with memory, well, you kind of get what you get sometimes. Let me give just one more quick outline there and here, fill in a little bit more of the areas that I think the arm would be able to move into. Put in some rough shading. Like that. So yeah, well, If you watched the show, let me know down in the comments. And if you remember discovering, you know, the source material and how outrageously violent that was, and how jarring that was for you when you found that out, well, let me know in the comments as well. Because, yeah, no, that was something. Okay, well, I think, let's put a little bit of shade in here. It doesn't need a lot. Just something to say that we know that something occupies space and creates a shadow. A little bit under here. And just put a little bit underneath here. Got a little more over the top lighting, I suppose. I mean, well, you know what I mean. Casting down from a top angle. A little bit in front there. A little bit in front here. Okay, well, I don't need to be doing too much with this. I think that's the rough idea of where we're going with this. You know, and I probably could have gotten away without doing any of the bunny blue to start. I just could have worked my way through it, but anyway, this I don't mind. Yeah, I'll have to look that up and just see where that went from my brain. Okay, well, thanks for hanging out for a little bit, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you again at some point in the near future. Ciao for now.